How do you do? And welcome to the King Street Cinema podcast. My name is Andy. I'm joined as ever by James.
Yes.
By James. With James.
Hi.
He just pulled his suitcase at me. And we're got another special episode. We're talking about anniversary movies that are showing at the end of August.
That's right.
We have three humongous anniversary movies. It's the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction.
It is.
The 55th anniversary of The Italian Job.
Insane.
And the 40th anniversary of The Terminator.
Indeed.
And we're going to start with chatting about Pulp Fiction, which will be shown at 7 p.m. on Thursday the 27th or 29th.
That's the one on Thursday. It's Thursday 29th, 7 o'clock.
29th. My handwriting there for the notes. So Thursday the 29th at 7 p.m. Pulp Fiction. Massive hit, but also a cult classic.
Indeed.
1994, Tarantino's second film as director.
Feature? Yeah, absolutely. As a director, indeed. Yes, had a few other credits under his belt by that time. I think like writing credits, story by kind of things. But
True Romance
for certain. Yeah, and maybe I'm thinking. Do you know? I got like in my head a couple of others, or at least one other of like some much smaller films, which because I haven't seen it, can't remember the title. But let's just say there was, I'm pretty sure, at least one other credit he had.
I think there was a film, something like called Sleep With Me or something like that.
He was in Sleep With Me, which came out again around this time, maybe 93, 94 kind of time. But I think he was only in that one.
Okay.
But there is an earlier film, even earlier than Reservoir Dogs, that he has a credit for. And, you know, if I was a proper professional, I would know the name of this film. But I haven't seen it, so it doesn't, stick with my head.
So his directorial debut was Reservoir Dogs. Was that 91?
That came out, I believe, 92.
92.
I think early 92.
Because that was very controversial at the time for violence. And I think it was temporarily banned over here, wasn't it?
That's true. Now, that was a thing that I remember very clearly at the time that Pulp Fiction came out, that released... on VHS, that I believe, in my head anyway, this is my memory, because I was there, but this is my memory, very young, about 12, coming up to 13 at this point, and they came out on VHS around the same time. Yeah, that's how I remember it.
And it was like the push for Reservoir Dogs helped with the promotion of Pulp Fiction.
Absolutely. In this country anyway.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction was huge. We're the same age. I was about 12. And I've got a very clear memory of, now I wouldn't have seen it in the cinema obviously, but someone lent me the video when it pretty much first came out, and I was at that age where my parents would let me watch some 18s, but because of the controversy more around Reservoir Dogs and Tarantino at the time, I watched it in my bedroom. I didn't tell them I had it pitch black, just like I was in the cinema, and I remember absolutely loving it.
Right.
And that's a very clear memory. I don't think I've ever seen it in the cinema. Right. The first Tarantino one I saw in the cinema would have been Jackie Brown.
Yeah, me too.
Which came out when I was about 15.
Yeah,
16.
we were about 15.
Yeah, but that was a 15.
It was a 15.
It was a 15.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
but there was a lot. Daily Mail and that sort of thing, I believe, were very, very anti-Tarantino. They big him up now, though, don't they?
It's really interesting. If you weren't there, or if you were there but didn't really care at the time, it's very interesting to sort of think of that moment in time and the controversy that went around the name Tarantino, at least in this country. I don't know what it was like in other countries, but in this country, certainly, even though he was being pushed as one of this, well, by the time Pulp Fiction came out and started winning awards, like winning the Palme d'Or and stuff, one of the biggest awards that you can pretty much win. That was going on, while simultaneously this kind of, maybe these kind of movies should be stopped, or we should be really thinking about violent films and what it's doing to us as a society, basically. The whole thing that he got asked time and time again in interviews was, do you think violence in films affects the way people live their lives? So should we be blaming violence in movies for the violence that's happening in real life? And of course his stance has always been no. And it became a thing that he ended up really hating people asking him constantly, because he'd gone over it so many times, which you can understand it being annoying and frustrating, leading you to the point that you get angry and shouty at people about. But that was a really fascinating thing, just that conversation, I think. And now, of course, we don't do that sort of thing so much anymore. Films are we understand and look at violent movies so freely now, and they're just everywhere, you know. And violence to that kind of cartoonish level that I often found most of Tarantino's films to be like. There are times when they were quite, you know, visceral and perhaps kind of realistic, but mostly, especially in his later films, it's quite cartoony.
By the time you get to Dusk Till Dawn and Kill Bill actually turns into a cartoon.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that the trouble with how people dealt with Reservoir Dogs, where you don't actually see that much violence, you see a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And the famous ear scene, which you don't see, the camera goes away, is because it's almost real. It's there's no fantasy in Reservoir Dogs, whereas
I guess so.
And kind of the same with Pulp Fiction, but Pulp Fiction isn't as violent as that. There's moments, but it's not.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I understood as a child, because I saw these films again very young, 12 years old, and I do think about it. It was funny at that time. I thought of myself as being quite grown up, as you do when you're that young, but looking back, of course, you really weren't.
Imagine you watching it with a monocle on.
But yeah, I found the films as a young person. It was the first time that I ever thought to myself, "Wow, you've watched something that you shouldn't have watched at the age you're at.
Yeah,
you're a little too young to get not the whole film, but just elements to it. Though, like, this is for a mature audience because you just can't understand really kind of some of the things that are happening here." And it wasn't, again, not really the violence, more either the drug use that happens in the movies or the sexual violence in Pulp Fiction, right? Yeah. Though now can kind of seen as perhaps slightly comical. As at a young age, it's like you don't understand it. It's too So these are definitely movies for adults. Yeah, adults, and that was very interesting. I think. Yeah, I mean, seeing that at that age and realizing that really shouldn't be seeing it.
Well, this is the thing, because Pulp Fiction, it was pushed for adults, but it was so in pop culture at the time. Yeah. There, you could buy the posters, but the posters and the soundtrack everywhere, but it wasn't pushed at kids. It was just aimed at young adults. Really
fascinating.
But then a few little things. I mean, I don't know what year Space Jam came out. Probably 97. Few years later,
you're probably right.
I remember seeing that in the cinema, and there was a big reference to Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, as a kid, I thought, whoa.
Yeah.
I generally thought, even though I'd seen it, and I'd have been like 15, 16, I was too old. In my mind, I was too old for Space Jam then.
Right.
And I remember thinking, that's weird. They've referenced this. Because there's other reference in it to, like, obviously Bill Murray's in it as references to Ghostbusters and stuff, which is fine because kids can watch that. But then I think it was that stage of trying to put jokes in there for adults to get. They thought it would go over the kids' heads, but it was so in the pop culture at the time. Kids would know what Pulp Fiction was, and they would want to watch it. We were those kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there might have been of course there were. I mean, we could think of like RoboCop and stuff like that. They were clearly like the first one that clearly for adult audiences, but kids saw them. So there was that thing did exist already. But I think you're right. The way that it's now being referenced in just pop culture, which are directly aimed at children, I don't know if there's a thing that did that yet. So clearly, there wasn't like a cartoon version of a thing like, okay, now you have the RoboCop, the cartoon.
That's Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, but there was never Pulp Fiction, the cartoon. It was just being referenced in other things. And I can't think of a thing that was doing that for that. And the 90s was certainly a time where that's the thing that's becoming a part of the culture, I suppose, in media, of lots of referential stuff. This is happening a lot. Happens all the time now. Back then, it was quite a new thing, I'd say.
Yeah. But it's let's say it's one of those iconic movies. You've got the soundtrack, which
absolutely. I had that. That was a thing that I loved so much. The soundtrack had this the tape, I think, at the time.
I had that in an album called The Tarantino Connection.
Had that as well. Had that on CD.
Yeah, and but old songs since this movie will always be remembered for this movie.
Absolutely.
Now. They were 20, 30 years older than that. It resurrected the career of John Travolta for a while.
Absolutely.
Which his career had gone. He sort of after the big Night Fever, Grease. Bit of a hit with Look Who's Talking, then the sequels bombed. He'd had some major flops like Two of a Kind and Perfect.
Oh yeah.
Lots of his career was in a big, and Tarantino gave him the supporting cast role. I don't think, was he nominated for an Oscar? I know Samuel L. Jackson was.
I don't believe so.
No, but he got a lot of acclaim for the role.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Like you say,
Yeah, well, after that, he done things like Face Off, Phenomena, which was big at the time.
Get Shorty.
Yes. So his career, he'd done a lot for that, and he stuck around for a few more. He's still obviously acting, but he was big again for another 5-6 years after.
Absolutely, yeah. He was. I mean, and his face since then has never really gone away, even if he doesn't really work so much. Like he's that you know him. And I don't know if that would be the case if it wasn't for Pulp Fiction, or if maybe another film wouldn't have come along at that time. That we would just remember him as the young, Tony or something.
He'd have gone almost the Don Johnson route. If you remember him for that role,
and that's it. That period, the 70s. That's all you know him as.
Yeah. But I generally think he's as I say, he's the world's best actor. But he's very likable, charismatic, and he can carry a movie, and he has done since then.
Absolutely.
And it was the film that made Samuel L. Jackson. When you think about it,
I would say for certain he'd worked a hell of a lot.
A year before he was in Jurassic Park.
He was in Jurassic Park, so he'd done a lot of supporting roles.
Yeah.
In some big budget movies or Hollywood movies, and a lot of indie films as well, and worked for a very long time and was a hard worker. And you can see that in the movie. Like when you see him, and if you hadn't seen, I obviously, like I say, saw the film very young, so I hadn't seen anything with him in, I don't think, up to that point. But even if you had, you were grown up and you'd seen him for the first time in this movie, you can see this is a guy who knows what he's doing. He's not just some newbie type thing, and he's brilliant. He's fantastic in it. And when you go back and see him in smaller roles and other things, of course, you're right. Jurassic Park, again, I would have seen that, but didn't put two and two together at the time. But if you just see him in other roles, you can see that he's got the potential. Yeah. And that's again another thing.
Do the Right Thing he's in, isn't he?
He is in Do the Right Thing.
5 years before this.
Yeah, and he was in a few Spike Lee films.
Yeah, and I think he's in Coming to America as one of them.
Again, very briefly. He's not.
But he stands out.
You remember him.
Yeah, you do. But he is that. I don't want to use the word iconic again, but there's more to him than just a Nick Fury, which a lot of people know for now.
Absolutely. That's quite sad in a way, isn't it? That because I would never think of Samuel Jackson and being Nick. I know he is Nick Fury. I've seen the movies, but I would never think, when I think of him, that's not what my go-to.
I think Pulp Fiction.
Of course.
Then probably that. Then possibly the Shaft remake.
I quite like the Shaft remake. I thought it was quite fun
because that was everywhere when it came out.
But I think, probably, I seen Spike Lee movies. I was watching again around a little after the time that I seen Pulp Fiction, and seeing him in those films like Do the Right Thing. I probably do remember him very, clearly in that one as being probably would be my second thinking when I think of it. Yeah.
But as a movie though, it was huge. I remember a lot of almost controversy when, like, the same year Forrest Gump pretty much beat it for everything at the Oscars, and some people are still a bit bitter about that.
Are they?
It's one of those things Pulp Fiction should have won.
That's interesting because I don't necessarily agree or disagree. I'm not a big Oscar fan, but I'm a little surprised that people speak in that way, because Forrest Gump is a hugely loved film, isn't it? So I'm a bit, because I don't think I've ever heard that. I think maybe like a couple of awards, maybe, but it did get the writing, didn't it?
It did win a few,
and it was nominated for a lot, so it wasn't discarded at all,
But I saw it was one of an internet story quite recently with the what should have won, and a lot of people were saying
that's interesting.
But I think even though Forrest Gump's loved, I think younger generations don't like it,
really,
and it's kind of aged a bit, but most things 30 years old have. The people of our age still love Forrest Gump, I think, but it's one of, and you keep seeing things about how Jenny was horrible and all
I see that online.
But that's no different to the Karate Kid. Danny's the real villain.
Sure, that's a good one too. Deconstruction. This kind of postmodern take on piece from the 80s.
But I'm very interested. I don't think I've ever seen Pulp Fiction in the cinema.
No,
I might have done, maybe on like the 10th or 15th. I might have done, but I'm very looking forward to seeing it on the big screen. I haven't. One thing that a few people almost put off by that it's told in kind of the wrong order, but I find it really easy to follow.
Oh, absolutely. It's not tricky. I didn't, even as a kid when I first saw it, I didn't think, I thought it was different. I don't think I'd seen it at that point, seen anything like that, but it was easy, it's not a problem. He's not trying to be overcomplicated with it. It's just like, it's episodic, right? Yeah. So, and that's the way that he was, Tarantino was kind of wanting to tell his, I think, early stories, that he would think of them as novels, like when he was working them out in his head to then put onto to scripts and stuff, he would think of them in that episodic kind of chapter type kind of way of like writing a novel. So that's why it comes out like that. I think. So one screening on the 29th, 7 p.m. It's quite a long movie, 2.5 hours. It is a long film. I think it flies by though. To be perfectly honest, I never thought of it as being something that was like that they could necessarily shorten.
I think it being episodic works for that.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you want some fun facts, it cost 8.5 million and made 213.9 million. IMDb 8.9 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes 92%.
Yeah, it's generally considered one of the greatest films by a lot of people of all time. Or it's generally up there, isn't it? You'd say, as in people's like top tens and stuff like that. It's difficult now for me to think of, because I saw it very young and saw it at the time it came out, around that time. It's very difficult for me to speak in a way that would suggest that someone who'd never seen it before, to see it now, how they wouldn't feel, I don't believe, the same experience. It wouldn't feel quite the same, especially as it's so referenced and things like that. You would have very much a different take on it, I believe, but I don't think it would be a bad take. No. I think if you'd never seen it before, and it was the first time you were going to see it, you would still think that was a movie that was like, wow, that was an impressive film.
Yeah, and it is one of those, you think you had to name, say, 10 things about the 90s, Pulp Fiction would be in it.
Without question.
Yeah.
It not only was it referenced in lots of things, it was copied, and people tried to make money off the back of it constantly.
Oh yeah. So many cheap
rip-offs constantly. It was just... that was a pretty bad thing that's the only bad thing I can think of, is the fact that it was so ripped off.
Yeah.
And that's a real shame that wasn't checked. Like people went, no, don't make that movie. It's too much like Pulp Fiction.
But so many of those movies, most of them aren't remembered at all.
No, not at all. It was that I saw a lot at the time. Yeah, it was annoying that I did.
Yeah. And also, Tarantino got massive and produced. They stuck his name on a lot of things. It just wasn't very good.
No.
But even to this day, he's only directed 9 movies.
There's 10 films altogether. He says 9 because he counts Kill Bill 1 and 2 as one film.
Okay.
So
fair dues.
And I don't know if he's still sticking to this, but he says that he's only going to make 10 movies in his whole career as a director, because he wants to go out with a big one, with like something instead of like fade away to making kind of cruddy movies in your old age kind of thing.
But that's things I've heard that, but I've also heard that he really wants to do a Star Trek film as well.
Yeah, sure. This is what I'm saying. It's like whether he's going to stick to that or not, who knows? Yeah. But
it's like the Manic Street Preachers only doing one album. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
I do. That didn't work, did it? Okay, so the next one
made that in there.
This one made 15 years. No, this is the 55th anniversary, so 25 years before. The Italian Job.
Oh, right, yeah. The Italian Job. Wow, the Italian Job.
Which I'm going to get when it's shown first, because I often forget. On Saturday the 31st, 2:30 p.m.
That's right.
And Sunday, this is of August, and Sunday the 1st of August at 7 p.m.
1st of September. Yeah.
Yes. This is the morning. Yeah, the Italian Job. Starring Benny Hill.
Well, Benny Hill is in it, and some people may say that the best scenes are the one with Benny is in them, but this is a great movie.
It's an old-fashioned comedy caper.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very British, though a lot of it set in and shot in Italy, but very British film. Wonderful, with Michael Caine. At his peak Caine, I'd say. I don't think you get any more full Caine.
It's like when Nicolas Cage goes full Caine. This is Michael Caine going full Caine. Yeah. But it's a really good video. You know what? I'll tell you about this. That it's the 55th anniversary, and I've seen this film once in my life.
Right.
It was at a cinema, and I believe if it's 55, I reckon it would have been the 35th or 40th anniversary I saw it.
Yeah.
So I've seen it once. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
In fact, I bought the DVD not long after I saw it, and I still haven't rewatched it because sometimes for me, if I see an old film on the big screen, how can I really top that? So I might have to see it again on the big screen. So I remember laughing a lot.
Yes, it's quite funny.
Yeah, but it was also one of those films that I think growing up, though I hadn't seen it till then, because I was always told to watch it. Like, you got to see this film.
It is one of those. Yeah. I don't think it gets talked about in that kind of way anymore. I don't know if young people speak in that kind of way about this movie, but for us, I remember sort of at that age of, again, round about a similar kind of age to seeing Pulp Fiction. You've got to see Italian Job. You've got to see. I mean, everyone, either people of our own generation, people from previous generations, just raving on about how this is one of the greatest films ever.
Yeah.
So yeah. That can have an effect where you go, I don't want to see that film, which is a shame. I think a real shame.
But I think why I ended up liking it so much was I thought it was going to be this trying to be clever. But it's just a fun, silly film.
Oh, this is a very straightforward, very simple plot, great fun, loads of scenes of just of fun. I reckon they had a great time making this movie. I can't imagine this was a hard thing to put together, to have, to work on. It looks like it's bloody laugh. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, this is the kind of movie that I don't know how people can, dislike. I mean, the whole "it's one of the greatest films of all time" is a bit, perhaps a little much, but there's no way. Well, there's no way you can't like this. This is a fantastically fun film.
It's one of those that people say, you got to watch it. It's one but when you see the top list, it's never in them.
No, not now. I mean, maybe it was. Let's say I don't know if people speak about it in that kind of way anymore. Maybe they haven't since the 90s.
Well, one thing is, I think people stopped talking about it around the time of the remake.
Well, which was 2003, was it? Something like that?
That's possibly around the time I saw it.
Right.
The first time.
Yeah.
And that's completely different. I've seen half of that. I caught the end of it on TV once, and it wasn't, I don't think it was that bad, but it's not the Italian Job.
Right.
It's Mark Wahlberg, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
I had no interest in seeing it, so I haven't. But this, I mean, seriously, it's just one of them movies that I think that's, even though it comes out in 1969, but it feels like more, I know this is only a few years previous, but it does feel more like, to me, like 66 kind of thing, more because a lot of it's quite swinging London kind of vibe to it. And that's a bit earlier than sort of 69.
When I said about Pulp Fiction, you think 90s, you think Pulp Fiction, you think 60s, you think Italian Job.
Absolutely, yeah. So I always think of it as like being more in the middle of the 60s, like right in the heart of it, more than right to the end.
Yeah, but that's because it almost wasn't like the same trendsetter. It was influenced by what was around it, and that takes a few years to come out. And you certainly wouldn't think 70s when you think.
No, not at all. Yeah,
because things, but as well, I mean, I don't know if it was that big a hit. It cost $3 million, made $9 million. Yeah, it was different back. It was
absolutely different, a different kind of, especially for a British movie. I mean, this is a British, but this is an American British sort of like crossover type thing. This is whole. I think the company that made the movie, which again name I think was quite a small company, didn't make too many films. So it's a smaller film. It was with a budget of $3 million, I think.
$3 million.
Like I mean, not tiny, obviously, but you're thinking you've got Michael Caine, and there's a lot of set pieces that are big, must have cost quite a fair bit. And that's where the majority of the money must have gone on a lot of the car chases and stuff, which happen in the final act, which are superb, by the way. I mean, just some of the best car cinema you're going to see.
Yeah. So, I think as well, this is one that. It was probably a moderate hit at the time, but we've been shown on TV and rescreened, probably almost like could have been like a drive-in type thing as well.
Maybe,
possibly.
Maybe.
It definitely it's also, I'm not saying it got bigger, but it stayed there.
It probably did get bigger. It probably, I mean, in the sense that, you know, like more people watching it, more people hearing about it, like, oh, yeah, this is, and like say we get into the 90s and people are still talking about like, oh, you've got to see this movie. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is a lot of younger people who haven't seen it. This might be the one out of the ones we're talking about. Some people might not even heard of.
Without question, if there was going to be one of the films that people hadn't heard of, it would be this one.
Yeah.
Which is, again, you know, odd, very odd for me to think about it that way. But I do, you know, I recognise that it's certainly not as well known as a Pulp Fiction or the upcoming movies.
Yeah. It's a 12A certificate.
Absolutely is, and I understand why. I always remember it as being a PG.
I think it was. Yeah.
But there are bits in it that you can think for the modern kind of way of cinema goer, some, you know, 60s material that not necessarily seen as for children these days, if you get my drift.
Before anyone starts getting angry and writing to us and kicking off and calling us, everyone in the film industry woke. Yeah, I will add that the Terminator, which we'll talk about in a minute, is now 15,
That's
not
true.
an 18.
Absolutely, it used to be an 18. It was 18 for many years. Whilst growing up, we knew it was an 18. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I understand why they might go for the 12A. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be someone that's like, oh, whatever, you know.
It also doesn't stop anybody.
No,
because 12A in cinemas pretty much means what PG used to anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're saying here that you know, if you take your kids to see it. I personally think, you know, child of 10, fine. Can't really see it necessarily as being too much of a problem. I mean, there isn't anything really that's in there that's bad, especially like any kind of language or, you know, as you get with some films around this time, maybe some racial material that's sensitive kind of stuff for today. But there isn't. I don't think there's any, if I remember correctly, of that in it.
There might be a bit of sexism in it.
This is the thing that I was only going to mention, that there is certainly is that there is that light sort of misogyny, I suppose you could say, that kind of thing. But again, Austin Powers. If you think Austin Powers, which obviously is a parody of films of a kind of way of thinking of this time in the 60s, that is what you're going to think of.
I was reading online quite recently some people complaining that Paint Your Wagon's got up to 12.
Oh yeah,
and that's one that, have you seen it? It should be. It's like, isn't most of it or a lot of it set in a brothel and stuff? Yeah, that shouldn't be PG.
Yeah,
I mean, I watched it when I was about 4, but I turned out fine.
There's a few,
But yeah, so
anyway,
Italian Job. Yes, so
it's a good one.
Yeah, 73, so 7.3 on IMDb.
All right,
and 81% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right, so yeah, see, less than Pulp Fiction, but still high.
Yeah, still.
Still definitely a movie that if you haven't seen, you should see, and if you have seen it, I'm sure you love it, and you should come see it again.
Well, I'm guessing that it's gone down a bit because people have reviewed the remake thinking it was that and given it a low score.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that wouldn't help, I suppose. So, I have not seen the film. Sorry, Marky Mark. Maybe it's wonderful.
It's all right from what I remember.
Okay.
Marky Mark.
He
was good with that bear in that bear film.
What? I don't know.
Yeah, I like bear films.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean, it's not really. It's a teddy bear, a talking teddy bear. It's not quite the same as like, you know, big old grizzly or something.
Yeah,
that would have been better, I think, if it was like living with a big grizzly bear.
Yeah, scary bear. Right. So speaking of scary, the Terminator.
Good segue.
40th anniversary.
Yes.
2 screenings.
Yes.
On the 31st of August at 6 p.m.
Yep.
And on the 4th of September at 7 p.m.
That's the one. Yeah.
Okay. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, the film that kind of made him. He'd done a few films before this.
Without question, the one that really kicks off his career as a filmmaker. As an actor and someone to watch.
Yeah. The man.
The man.
Which actor stroke sports celebrity did they initially want to play the Terminator? Do you know this one?
No, I don't. Is it not another bodybuilder?
No,
I didn't think so. I think it's going to be someone quite slender, athletic.
Yeah, and I'll give you a clue. Arnie said this in an interview, and Arnie laughed as he said it.
Yeah.
They didn't want him to play it because America couldn't picture this guy as someone who'd go around killing people.
Right, and it's the juice, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't heard that. I'm not necessarily surprised because, again, I had been in a few films and was kind of thought of as like, maybe one to watch, get him into some other stuff.
Yeah. That's O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, O.J. Simpson is the juice. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I mean, yeah.
You've got to Google this interview just to see Arnie laughing at him.
Yeah. It's a good thing he wasn't, obviously, for many reasons, but just thinking of it from a filmmaking point of view, Arnold Schwarzenegger, no one else could have played him.
Yeah,
come on.
I
heard though that Lars Henriksen was also up for perhaps being the Terminator.
I could see that.
Who was in it? He plays a cop in it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Who again has been, I think, a few of James Cameron's films, isn't he?
Yeah, I think now post Arnie being in it, it's difficult just because he's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's other people who could have worked, but he'd been a different.
Absolutely, yeah, very different. Very different just feel and vibe, I think, all around. And the idea of, on paper, I think the idea of a bodybuilder playing this character sounds absurd. It really does. It sounds weird and crazy, and like that's just going to be funny, isn't it? More than anything else. But, it's so far from the truth. He's terrifying, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's absolutely scary.
Yeah, exactly. And this is one thing, Arnie often gets criticised for being a not such a great actor. But when you see him, the personality is in interviews, and I've seen him on stage once, and he's not that guy.
Yeah.
He's... I don't know if there's lots of outtakes of him cracking up and stuff. There probably was, but he's so menacing in it.
I think that I haven't really read much about him. I've always very much admired him as an actor, and I think as a person who's always wanted to, who's worked for what he's wanted, sort of thing. He's always gone out there and I think from what I feel like watching his career as it's progressed, this is early on, and I think he would have just taken everything as being like, any information you can give me, anything you can do to help me, I'm going to take it on board. I don't think he was ever at a point, especially early on in his film career, would have been like, I know what I'm doing. I'm Mr. Universe. I know how to do this. I know how to be a robot. I think he would have been completely like, just any information, everything he can, just absorb it all. And as you can see throughout his career, he does progress, gets better and better and better and better. This is a role that's, for the time that he was making the movie, it's perfect for him. Doesn't say very much, just has to look big and scary, right? And he can do that, I think, by not acting, almost. It's almost like I feel like they would say to him, don't think of it like you're a robot. Don't think of it like you're this thing. Just think of it as like, do you just walk? Yeah. Just be,
But I think he's quite interesting because the way his career's gone, I don't think he could do that role now and be menacing. No. Because if you know who he is,
sure.
A random who falls on this planet and sees it would do, but the rest of us, because he's done stuff like Last Action Hero, that you can't see him as that now.
Difficult.
But also he didn't want to play the role. He wanted to be the hero, the Michael Biehn character.
Yeah.
And then they changed his mind and he admitted that he's wrong, because that was the naive. He just wanted to be a film star. He didn't want to be an actor. He wanted to be a film star. And if you look at his first Hercules in New York, which is 10 years before this at least. When he was called Arnold Strong and he was dubbed over, he just wanted to be the hero. And the same in Cactus Jack, also called the villain with Kirk Douglas, good comedy.
Yeah.
But I stick up for Arnie, but he's not good in that movie.
No.
And then this,
Yeah, exactly. It was just like the perfect kind of thing to
he
propel him into the consciousness of people.
And people. He overshadows Michael Biehn, who's really the star, and Sarah Connor, played by Linda Hamilton, who I think is really good in this movie as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that's quite debatable to a certain degree. I don't know. I think they complement each other very well. Yeah. I think the characters, the actors playing the characters they're playing, are correct for the film, and I especially Linda Hamilton, who I just think is just great.
Yes,
just fantastic. And I again try to think of someone else around the time that could play her, maybe like Jamie Lee Curtis or something like that. Would it have worked? Probably not as well. I think there would be other people that could have done it, but
and the fact she wasn't a big star
exactly helps, maybe that helps the whole thing overall, because no one in it is is a star yet.
Yeah. And it's interesting the way that he went off to be this big star, and the other two worked.
Yes.
But, you look at 2 years later, and Lynn Hamilton's in the sequel to King Kong, which is quite a low budget. And then she was in Beauty and the Beast in the late 80s, was that?
TV show.
So but that was a big show.
It was, yeah.
And I think back then there was such a divide between movies and TV that I don't know whether it was brave of her to do that or that's the choice she had. But then obviously she was back for Terminator 2, which was huge as well, which we will talk about as well in a minute because it's shown that as well. But yeah, I mean, it's watching the movie, they're all good. The whole cast are good.
Yeah, the reason why the film is a success isn't as great as Arnold is in it. The reason the film is a success is because everything about it works.
Yeah.
He could have been perfect and everything else was not so great. It would not be remembered in the way it is.
Of course not, no. And interesting, just looking at the facts, it's 107 minutes, and to me, this feels like a 90-minute movie.
Very much so, yeah.
So it flies by.
It does. And it's made like it's a 90-minute film. This is where Cameron's background is. It's in making B movies. It's learning on the job. It's great. I mean, as much as I'm not like a massive fan of all of his films, I'm very much an admirer of his work ethic and where he comes from, his background, which is, like I say, just working and learning.
Yeah. Because prior to this, I mean, he'd been about for years, but he'd worked with Roger Corman.
Yeah.
Battle Beyond the Stars, he'd done a lot for, and then he directed Piranha 2.
He did,
which was also Corman produced, I think. And then this was, this is his first project of his own, I'd say.
It's the first feature film that he's directing. Yeah.
Apart from Piranha 2.
Oh, sorry, apart from Piranha 2.
But this is more his thing.
Sorry.
Because Piranha 2 is a sequel and...
Yeah, it's the first film he's directing where it's his work. It's his work, and he sold the rights to the producer so that he could, for $1 or something, so that he could get sold when he directs the film. It's his choice. He gets artistic choice, creativity, everything. It's like his vision. No one else can come in and tell him how it should be.
Yeah, and it worked.
And it did work. Yeah. And he made a lot of money.
He did.
For a movie that was of a budget of, what are we saying, about 6.4, making over nearly 80.
Yeah,
that's probably worldwide, but still, that's
really
huge.
That's mental. That's really good. I will add, I can't not mention the getting sued by. There was an episode of Quantum.
Harlan Ellis, who's a famous sci-fi writer, a very grumpy man, extremely grumpy man. So this isn't his only time he's ever come into sort of conflict legally with people about his work and things. But yeah, a very grumpy guy. Saw that someone had made a film that was very vague. This is why I mentioned it, because I've seen that episode. And come on, vaguely like his work, and sued him. Yeah, and I think if Cameron did rip it off, it was subconsciously. I don't think Cameron had even seen it. No, he could have done. He's that age to have watched it. But I don't think it's not. It's so. It's ridiculous, really. It's a bit. This is my point of view. I think the guy just saw a way to make some money. Yeah. So this is an episode of The Outer Limits. I can't remember the name. Soldier. So Soldier, that's the one. Yes. Yeah. So again, guy goes back in time. Yeah, that's pretty much what it's got in common. Yeah. Goes back in time and is a soldier. And is a soldier. Yeah. That's about it. Really. But no, I mean, and to be honest, if it was that obvious of a rip-off. I stand by it isn't a rip-off at all, but it would be remembered for that, and people would bring it up all the time. I bring it up because it annoys me that this bloke got money out of him for it. But he did. He won the case. Yeah, he had to put sort of inspired by Harlan Ellis, his work or something on the end credits or something. Yeah, as well. And Cameron wasn't happy because I think the film company paid up, and it wasn't actually him. And he won't talk about it. Yeah, that's right. Because he's like, I think he wanted to fight it, and they just thought it'd be easier to pay just to make it go away. Yeah, which is sad. But also, I'd like to say actually, just because that whole thing is ridiculous and awful. Yeah. But I am a fan of Harlan Ellis, and I will say that if you haven't heard of him, you should check out some of his work because it's very good. It's very It's very influential. It inspired a hell of a lot of people, but I do not believe on this occasion that James Cameron was
Yeah.
ripping him.
Also, there's a difference between inspiring.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
You know, so.
But yes, he was a grumpy git. And, that's clear.
Yeah. But yeah, it's another one like the effects. Yeah, for a low budget-ish movie.
Yeah.
I still think look mostly great. It's very 80s, very practical.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then it's one of those that you watch it, and if you're a fan of 80s movies, especially action movie, so many of the smaller roles are played by familiar faces who pop up in like all the cops you've seen as cops in other films. I do think it's one of those, for what it is, one of those perfect movies.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. For like you say, for the kind of film it is 100%. There isn't one that's better, I don't think. Where it's the premise is that there is a figure stalking another coming after a person, and there's someone there who's there to protect them, to help them. It's not a horror movie. It's
but it's got elements.
It's close. It's close to that, but it's not quite that. So it's not Halloween necessarily, but it's. I don't quite know how. If you liked one film, that kind of thing, how you couldn't like the other.
Yeah. I look at. It's the same sort of thing. It is very Halloween, but sci-fi, or action type.
Action sci-fi.
Then it's also sort of a bit alien because it's the stalking, and that's why it works, because it's the fear of the one person and it not being able to be stopped.
Yeah.
It's like, I suppose nowadays you call Sarah Connor the final girl.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the way she changes in the second movie.
Well, this is it. Comes a very different character, and this showed the versatility of Linda Hamilton herself.
Yeah.
Show that she wasn't just this kind of one note.
Yeah, and that is being shown directly after Terminator.
Yeah. On
the 31st of August.
That's right.
Terminator
8:30.
2, made in 1991, and it was one of the biggest films, if not the biggest film of '91.
There couldn't have been a bigger, surely.
I don't know. It was an R-rated movie, so there might have been a kids' film once. I don't know, 91, there might not have been.
I can't think of a film that was as big as that movie. No. Box office wise.
Yeah. This was the same year. I mean, it wouldn't have done as well, but was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves that year?
True.
That was big, but I don't think it would have made as much money. Well, I don't know.
Damn, I didn't know that. But I now you say it. See, because I would have thought, that's definitely a movie that was huge.
Yeah.
But I just can't imagine that it outdid. Though the budget, maybe because the budget is bigger, though I'm sure I don't know, Kevin Costner probably would have asked for a lot more.
But yeah, but also I think Prince of Thieves is one of those is not as remembered as well as.
No.
And it was one that it was huge at the time, but people don't really talk about it much now. Yeah, I do, but
Kevin Costner had another movie out that year. He had JFK, didn't that come out that year?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
that was a year for Costner, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, Terminator made a lot more money.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, but the thing is, Terminator cost twice as much as Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It cost 94 to 102 million.
Yeah.
And Prince of Thieves cost 48 to 60 million.
Right.
So I don't know, and then that made 510 to 520 million.
Yeah.
Whereas Prince of Thieves made 390 million.
Oh, no, that's probably the better one then.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
But more tickets would have been sold for Terminator.
Yeah, absolutely. More tickets, without question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Yeah.
Again, another one of their movies for us of the age we would have been when this came out. Everywhere, everyone's talking about it constantly.
There was action figures.
There were action figures for it. I wasn't allowed any either. There were computer games. There were loads of stuff.
Guns N' Roses doing "You Could Be Mine" for the soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, if you like that sort of thing, there was that.
Arnie in the video.
Yeah. It was
great. It was another one. It was
Edward
strange.
Furlong.
Yeah,
he was a name for a bit. I mean, this was his first film, but he was like one of them finds. Like you go, wow, a diamond in the rough kind of thing. Yeah. Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe that's completely wrong, but that kind of thing. Just wow, this kid, brilliant.
And Robert Patrick
again, been acting for a while. But has never had a role like this before.
Yeah, he was scary at it.
He was. Again, I think in a way, when you're thinking of the original idea for the first movie, that's kind of like, I think, would have been like the thinking. You know,
Yeah.
not necessarily what the Terminator could do. Obviously, was much more advanced, but just the way he looks, I think, just quite athletic, quite like face of stone, chiseled. You know, that kind of thing.
This was huge.
Scary eyes.
A lot more humour in this than the first one.
Yeah,
and they turn Arnie into a good guy, which I think, looking back, is the way his career went. Really, is the only way he could have really gone with it. I suppose
by that point, it would have been odd if he hadn't been, a good guy. He still is a Terminator, though.
Yeah.
And there's and it's clever. It's well written because there's no getting around that. You could poorly write this, and it would become absolute silly slapstick, kind of thing. My best friend, the robot, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's really well done. Where he's been
there's humour in it, but it's not silly.
Not all. And there are moments. They got moments in there where you go, he still is a Terminator, right? And if you don't check him and make sure he understands what his goal is, he will go out and do horrific things to people. So which is great. It's properly well written.
But he got to stretch Arnie a bit more as well.
It did, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so let's think. What's he just come off the back of? He's got a Total Recall, which is, again, lots of interesting stuff going on in that film. Yeah. He's a clever character. It's a clever movie. But it's still got all the fun stuff that you expect from an action movie and a Paul Verhoeven film.
Yeah, and you've had Kindergarten Cop by then, haven't you?
Twins, Kindergarten Cop. So we've seen him now in more versatile roles and where he's playing, not just good guys, but quite lovable almost good guys. Good guys that are now hanging out with, looking after kids and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, is the first Terminator, is that the only film he's ever played a bad guy? I suppose Batman and Robin. Oh yeah, but very cartoony. But if you just think of 80s action movies are always kind of weird because yes, they're the good guys, but they behave. Do you know what I mean? So by the time we get to Twins, he's behaving like a good guy. How you'd expect a good guy to really behave, other than just some badass who's going around killing all the bad guys. Yeah, Commando Predator. Yeah, Commando Predator. That kind of thing. Yeah. He's not necessarily someone you want to spend too much time with because it could all go horribly wrong. Yeah. But time to let you go. Exactly. Don't want to get on his wrong side. Nah, but that was even then that played into the humour side of it, which but made him this big likable. And he's always been that more likeable, more comedic than he was always compared to Stallone, but he's done comedy 10 times, 100 times better. Yeah, I mean, for those kind of movies, absolutely. He's definitely, in my opinion, the best action hero. Most charismatic. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'd rather watch one of his movies, if that's what we're going for, than a Stallone film. But of course, if we're looking for a Rocky type movie, then I'm going to watch Stallone over Schwarzenegger any day. Yeah. I really hope that Chuck Norris isn't listening to this conversation. He will track us down. Well, he's all right. No, he's not. I mean, yes, he is. He's really good. So Terminator 1 and 2 back to back. Yeah. I mean, how can you miss that? Yeah. I mean, seriously, that's a double bill right there. Yeah. Right. That's one of the double bills, surely. It is. And I find it so mad that firstly Terminator's 40 years old and the sequel's well over 30 years old. That's right. And they still stand up. I watched Terminator 2 a year or so ago. Yeah. I watched that as a double bill with Aliens, which was fantastic. Yeah. James Cameron sequel. That was one we did, right? So, that was a good night. That was amazing. And both films were pretty long and it flew by. Yeah. That's probably 2 years ago now, that. I mean, again, I'll talk about Cameron in that way that just his background is making the B movie and he knows how to make an A movie, with that sensibility, and it works. It's just perfect. It's brilliant. I think the best big budget fantasy style films are made by people who make good B movies because they've done the same sort of thing on a smaller scale and they know what they're doing. Like you look at Joe Dante, even Spielberg. When you look at a film like Jewel, and
Spielberg is exactly in the same ballpark as them.
They've learned the skill and they know how to make a movie without a budget. So with a budget, it should be.
They understand timing.
Yeah,
right? You just understand timing. This is the thing: is knowing the pacing of a movie, knowing what needs to go and what needs to be in there, and how long it should be there. Right?
Yeah.
But just that's what it is, and it's not easy. It's really not easy for a lot of people. I think they really want to make their mark, and they feel like they've got a hell of a lot to say, and so they throw a lot of ideas in there, and things just get really baggy and too long, and But these guys, James Cameron, at least at this point in his career, for certain, was making movies just for what they were perfectly.
Yeah,
and he had every, the success, and from that, the numbers as we see here, the people coming to see the movies is absolutely justified.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I still, and I should have done, and I still haven't seen The Abyss.
Right,
but every Cameron film I've seen, I've enjoyed, and I think a lot of people of our age don't like Avatar. That is aimed at people 20 years younger than us who didn't grow up maybe with Star Wars and didn't grow up. Yes, it's very influenced by other things that we grew up with. Yeah, it's Dances with Wolves. Yeah, it's Fern Gully, but it's still enjoyable, and the action's great. The characters are likable, and I can see why those movies are so big.
Yeah,
and I've seen them both. I've enjoyed them. I'm not going to walk back wearing the T-shirt, but good on them, and I will go and see the next one.
Yeah, I saw the first Avatar and I enjoyed it. It took me a while to see it. I didn't see it when it first came out. And I did enjoy it. I think I remember feeling that perhaps it was a bit long, but I did still enjoy it. So I don't think there's ever been one of his films that I thought, but he doesn't make bad movies.
No,
he doesn't.
I mean, Titanic's good, isn't it? We've got to admit that.
Absolutely. Again, Titanic is probably too long.
Yeah.
It should be a little shorter, but the stuff works. Yeah. And when you get to the bit where the Titanic is sinking, which is obviously what we really want from this movie, it's great.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry. But it is great. It's great. And I saw it twice at the cinema, which at that time, in fact, still is a rarity. I don't do that too often. And I did because I was so impressed with the second half of the film.
Yeah. So, So, Cameron, double bill.
Absolutely.
I will quickly mention, Joe Dante, and we've talked about Piranha 2. The first Piranha will be shown at the Be Kind Rewind. I'm not sure exact date, but check that out.
I haven't got the poster with me, sadly.
Yeah.
Sorry,
there's one where we're sat. There's one right at the other side of the room, but I'm not getting up.
Okay.
But you should look up all the Be Kind Rewind. It's on the website, which you should all check regularly. Yes. King Street Cinema Ipswich. Just Google it; it comes up straight away.
It does.
There's Facebook. There's Instagram. Follow it. You guys are really good at putting out what's on. I like that. So everyone should follow it. Obviously, because I do this podcast with you, people go, "Oh, what's on?" Follow the site.
Yeah,
tells you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sometimes not so great at remembering things or having bits of information. I know we kind of do this podcast as it's a little not perhaps as professionally as perhaps we should, but it's a very laid back, nice, chilled out atmosphere, and we're just talking about exactly. We're just talking about the movies. Yeah. We can't give everybody every single little piece of information at once. So yes, just go check out the website.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all you got to do.
And if you know us, we do share things as well.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff.
It is that not just with King Street. I mean, I run a pub, and I get people will message me. You got anything on tonight? And I've just shared a post saying we've got karaoke. So it is that. I know it's I'll always get back, and I'm sure you're the same when people ask. But often the info is there.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I do, I sometimes feel a little bit like, you should have it all in your head, knowing everything all the time. But I don't have that kind of brain.
No. And you're talking to someone who I booked 2 different concert tickets for the same date recently. So
what's all the dilemma? Sophie's choice.
Yeah, well, won't go to either. Which could I sell for the most? No. I'm going to see Delamitri. Anyway,
cool.
Stuck in the 90s.
Yeah.
So check out all those movies. I'll quickly run through it again. Pulp Fiction for Thursday the 29th, 7 p.m. Italian Job, Saturday the 31st at 2:30 and Sunday the 1st at 7. And then the Terminator double bill on the 31st from 6 p.m. The second one's on straight after. And then the first Terminator you see again on the 7th. You could have a hell of a day on the 31st by going to see Italian Job.
Yeah.
At 2:30, have a bit of a break, get yourself a sandwich, and then go and watch the Terminator.
The Terminator movies. I mean,
and you could do that at 15 years old as well nowadays. You can be 15 and watch all those movies.
That's exactly. I mean, it's a perfect weekend. Yeah. Really.
Yeah. If you're 15 years old and regret not being born in 1991, you can know. Yeah. So thank you very much. We'll be back for another podcast very soon. There's lots of stuff coming up. I don't know. We'll have to think what we're going to do next.
Oh, there are many options.
There's a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Lots of cool stuff.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about something very soon. Thank you for joining me. Bye.